Welcome back to this final part of Murder with Friends. Today we've been talking about the Tokyo sarin gas attacks. Where you're picking up with us, we're going to be talking about the effects, the investigation, and what happened to these cult members and this cult leader who led this attack on so many innocent lives. So first, I want to turn it over to you guys, because something that I kept finding in my research was just how non-violent the culture is in Japan. So why are they so incredibly non-violent? Why is that so important?
To back up your statement, like when I go on trips, I always see how safe it is, and Tokyo is literally the safest city to travel to, as according to like whatever Thrillist or whatever.
A strong source.
A strong source I go to for lists on the internet.
Yeah, like Singapore and Tokyo are like the safest places.
Yes, and it's just there's an idea that you follow. We're all in it together. And it just is across the board. Everyone seems very accommodating. However, the last time I was there, they did find a serial killer. It was all in the news.
That's true, and that's actually that has been added to my list of stories to cover as that breaks down.
My favorite Tokyo being super safe thing is that if you're just wasted, which the Japanese drink.
Yeah.
If you're just wasted, it's kind of frowned upon, but not really super frowned upon, just go to sleep on the sidewalk. Like dudes in like nice suits will literally just take their jacket off, roll it up and be like, I'm done.
But something that's interesting about this is that after the attacks happened, there were some questions from the public, which is apparently very rare, on how the police sort of handled the investigation. What was their hesitation in reaching out to the cult sooner? Before I get a response from you, I want to go to our final element, again narrated by our dear friend Tina.
Just one day prior to the attack in Tokyo, law enforcement were at the Aum Supreme Truth Office investigating a kidnapping. Did the police have insider knowledge about the cult's desire to wreak havoc inside Japan? T.R. Reid from the Washington Post wrote at the time, the police performance to date on the biggest terrorist case here in decades is beginning to spawn questioning by the press and public of police tactics and procedures. Something unusual in a society that tends to respect authority, particularly law enforcement authority.
So why do you guys think that people were a little confused with the hesitation to go to the Aum headquarters before the attack, given that they knew that there was something shady going on?
Well, I saw a BBC report that said in the wake of World War II, Japanese authorities were afraid to go after anything religious.
Why?
Because of the Jew thing. Because of the Holocaust, essentially. The idea that an ally of Japan, Germany, would go so intensely after a religion and it would spawn a world war that ended up with nuclear weapons attacking Japan. They were like, let's not go after
gloves on about any religious group and trying to say like, oh well, like this religion is bad. And it is the Japanese relationship with crime is such an interesting one from an American perspective. Like they're literally Yakuza offices.
Yeah,
like you could just go to a Yakuza, like the family's just office. Like they just have like office space and secretaries and all this stuff.
And they wear white, they walk around.
I think
you're supposed to get out of the way if they get in line. You're supposed to back up if the Yakuza gets there. They have tattoos. That's why if you show up in Japan with tattoos, they're like, you'll be white, so they won't think you're in the Yakuza, but people don't have tattoos. The idea of like, the area in Japan where they go, if you go to Tokyo, go to Robot Restaurant, there's real big high rises because the Yakuza burned down the entire neighborhood so they could build these high rises and make more money off it. But there's this area called Golden Guy they didn't burn down because they thought it was cool. Like there is organized crime all over the place.
So their relationship with crime is for talking about like the sarin gas thing, is being afraid, as he was saying, being afraid to go after a religion. But seeing the way that the police handled this is so bizarre, because there's a sarin attack, that tries to kill, or maybe does, the exact judge who's about to try the leader of this cult, and they don't immediately raid them. The only time when they raid them is when they then find traces of sarin, like near their like in the town where like the compound is. And you see it time and time again in the story, the police just being like, we're not really gonna touch this. And it's very weird.
it's strange because you could say on the one hand, well, they didn't feel they had enough evidence to raid the compound, but a lot of the reports, I got a lot of my information for this episode from the Japan Times, especially reports at the time felt like they had enough evidence that there was something shady going on in this cult to warrant a search. And now eventually 2 days following the attacks, they did do a massive search and crackdown of the multiple different compounds that they had around Japan. And of course they found so many materials that you mentioned a helicopter.
So it's interesting. And in the wake of this, they raided the compound, right?
But they're going to do it before.
That's the circular part of that argument is they were actually going to raid the compound. It wasn't that like, why didn't they raid it before the attack? The attack was because they were about to raid the compound.
Yeah, that's right.
They found out that the compound.
They're like, we got to do it now.
And
then we'll get them to blame America. The same way it already worked in Matsumoto when they did the same type of thing to attack judges who were going to rule against the compound.
It had worked, yeah.
So this is like his MO. It just took a very long time, according to one of the authority figures in the police, because in the intelligence services, because they were just more reticent to go after anything religious in the wake of World War II. And granted, it was 50 years after, but still.
And some of the things they found when they raided the compound were also really troubling. A lot of the members were malnourished that were there because they'd been fasting. They also found these. It's a helmet that it's like a helmet hat thing that they would put on that was supposed to transmit the thoughts of Shoko Asahara to whoever was wearing it, so you could be closer to the leader. It is literally a form of brainwashing.
It's cult tech.
Yeah,
this is the only time I've heard about like cult technology. It's so typically like get away from technology and like modernism and all that, and like a return to this false idea of like spiritualism and like a kind of like Western like monkish nature, but they were hyper obsessive about like leaping forward technologically based and using technology in conjunction with these kind of like Buddhist and yogic teachings.
Well, like we discussed in part 1, they went after, or maybe in part 2, watch all three. Find out where we talked about it. Basically, they went after people that were working in computer science, that were highly educated, that could help them develop this technology that the leader, Shoko Asahara, believed would make believers more compliant if he could have access to their thoughts, if they could have access to his.
Right, the idea that feelings were things to be conquered, and if you think right, you won't have feelings, and that's good.
Yeah, you can like fix it. I want to know what that helmet's plugged into, because there's wires in the pictures. What did they plug it into?
There was,
if anyone knows,
please.
Did it like go into like a printer?
Yeah.
Did they connect with each other? Because I thought it was like he like wears the helmet, and then you wear a helmet, and they like mind meld.
Right.
But so what's
you see some,
I think it's placebo.
You think it's a placebo?
I think it's a placebo. So when I was a kid, there was like this book that went around. I went to Catholic school, and there was this book that everyone handed around called Conversations with God, and it was basically like, if you just let your mind go in a conversation with God, that is God.
With this helmet on.
So if you put the helmet on and you tell yourself you're gonna get the thoughts of the leader, your mind just fills in the blanks with what he's probably telling you.
Was it like plugged in like in a wall?
It's
like where did it
go
to?
Like it's just an amp. It's just like a half-inch cable, and they plug it into like an amp.
Or they like open a door and they like put it in the other room, and it's just like sitting there like empty headphones, and they just like close the door. They're like someone else is put it into the
or an antenna.
It's a good question, because you see in some of the footage of the people that are being seized and taken from the compound, you see some of them are still wearing these helmets, but they obviously cannot be plugged in. So is it more of a security thing at that time?
It wasn't just like a helmet. There's wires coming out of it, coming out the back. In one of the pictures I saw, I've got so many questions about what the murder thing is terrible.
It's awful.
But everything about this cult is like next levels bonkers. Like Manson, okay, like I get like why this like worked. Jonestown, I get why this worked. This is just it's so.
There's another cult in Japan. There's another cult in Japan where the guy decided he could diagnose you by looking at your feet. So there's some other bonkers ass things out there.
Well, and the cult still exists today. Like the cult is still around today. It has about 1,000 members. It goes by a different name. Aleph, yeah, it goes by a different name. And following the seizure of these powerful men in the cult, and then also many members that were arrested as well, there were subsequent attacks, those smaller. One of them was again tried to be perpetuated on the Tokyo subway. So they did not go out with a whimper in the months following this. So this happened in March, all the way from March until July. There were attacks from the members of this cult that felt like, oh my gosh, they've taken our leader. You know, doomsday is here. Like let's go. And then finally, they were able to apprehend people and get the situation under control. But for a time, traveling in Japan, especially on public transportation, just sounds incredibly terrifying. Which brings me to the discussion I want to have with you guys, which is, this feels like this could happen again at any time, because they brought little packets with them in their jackets. They did not look conspicuous at all. You know, traveling with an umbrella is not unusual.
Apparently,
people didn't realize what was
makeable
happening
from like things that you could get pretty inconspicuously. Like it doesn't, and I'm sure someone's gonna correct me a little bit on this, but it seems like you could get the material without like getting too much suspicion for like, oh, like that's the precursor for Sarin, and like someone just bought it at Home Depot. Like we gotta check this dude out. Oh, he's in a cult. We should go to this guy's house and knock down his door. But it seems like could happen anytime, anywhere. And that non-scientists, it wasn't chemists or like biochemical engineers, like a movie being like, all right, like we're gonna make this thing. It was just smart dudes.
But the scale that they were able to create, like two things happened. There were a bunch of things that happened in the wake of this. One was there was a report from some Americans who showed up in Japan and said that there was no way that this group could make this much. And then they raided the compound and were like, there are thousands of gallons of sarin liquid here.
It was like the precursor to sarin. That's what they found, like tons and tons of. So they were preparing for to just keep going, to destabilize the Japanese government.
But then they found out that the people that did the report were paid by Aum to show up in Japan and give a report.
And be like, wow, these guys were crushing it.
Yeah.
Like, what a weird PR too of like, whoa, these guys are doing a great job.
They said that they were like, they couldn't make that much gas, but it's like, look, there's that much crap lying around. I mean, it's just,
scary.
The more layers that you peel back of this cult, the more ridiculous and insanely impressive almost it is that they're able to do that.
Signing up for like, oh, like you have a kind of like interesting take on like yoga and Buddhism, and then it's just like 6 months later, you're like, oh, what's in this room? Oh, that's a lot of signs that say toxic in Japanese.
And like, one automatic weapon.
And just the one automatic weapon with that, like a shining light on it, like we did it, you guys.
The leap I think that's the most compelling thing for me when it comes to cults, is the leap people can make from what you just said to what they ended up doing.
They said a lot of people, like when they also ran for office, not that interesting of a story, they ran a bunch of offices, and apparently when people went out to like knock on doors, be like, hey, vote for our cult, a bunch of people were just like, oh my God, wait, the world is great, like I need to leave, and they lost a ton of people. So that's why they had, as you talked about, all these compounds. Like you have to stay in this environment, you have to be separated from society. And then that guy went back in, he was like, oh, wait, I'm gonna kill people. The older physician that was on the train.
Yeah, wow, I feel like we really,
can we hang out and like talk about something fun sometime?
Yeah, I would.
Nope.
Guys, as soon as I'm done doing the outro for this episode, we're gonna hang out and talk about all the great things about Tokyo and Japan, because this has been a super heavy episode, but I've loved having you guys on. Thanks so much for doing this the day before Thanksgiving.
I brought my Suica card.
Oh my God.
This is how you travel on the subway.
Aw.
It's a little penguin. How could you be afraid?
Did you get that instead of Passimo?
I know I did. It was when I first went, I didn't speak literally any word besides sumimasen, which is the one thing they tell you to say, which means I apologize for everything about me right now.
I do that in America. When I was, we'll close on this because it's fun. When I was intoxicated in Japan and someone to speak to me in Japanese, my brain went this path. I went, not English, speak Spanish.
Yeah.
I would speak Spanish like very drunk to so many Japanese people. And I also don't speak Spanish well. It's not like I was like, oh, okay, I got this. It's still, if someone spoke Spanish to me, I would be like, I got nothing. But I literally was like, oh, como se llama? Like, it's like, I have no idea what to do. I have not learned, Caroline learned a bunch of Japanese. I don't know a lick of it.
Hey, this is surprisingly a cheery end to a pretty dark episode. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Thanks for watching this episode of Murder with Friends. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Had you heard about this before? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we will see you next time on Murder with Friends.